The day my husband became rich, he turned his back on me, as if I were a memory he was trying to erase. That sentence still burns in my throat, because I watched it happen. No theory, no exaggeration, no misinterpretation. I was right there, standing in our living room, as he received the news about the inheritance that would change everything. And that very moment, he began shutting me out. Not by saying anything, not by raising his voice, but with a silence so calculated it felt like a warning. After the reading of the will, we drove home in this strange, chopped-up quiet. He drove like a man carrying a secret too heavy for the trunk. I tried making small comments. "Are you okay? I know this whole process brings up a lot." And he answered with short, empty sounds. Yeah, we'll talk later." Except later never came. When we got home, he tossed the keys on the table and went straight to the couch, phone glued to his face, as if he were logging into a parallel life that had no room for me. I stood there for a few minutes, just watching. The house felt too quiet, but his silence was the loudest thing in the room. I asked if he wanted something to eat. No answer. I asked if he wanted to talk. Nothing. I asked if he was stressed about the responsibility of the inheritance. He raised his hand to silence me without even looking at me. It wasn't a fight. It was worse. It was erasure. He sat there, washed in the blue light from his screen, with the same expression of someone mapping out his future, just not with me in it. Every tap of his thumb, every scroll, every frozen expression, I felt more distance than in any argument we'd had in 15 years of marriage. And then came the sound, a short chime from his phone, but it hit me like a punch. I looked at him. He hid the screen fast, but too late. I'd already seen enough. A bank transfer notification to an attorney. My stomach dropped, not from jealousy, from instinct. When a woman is ignored by her husband on the same night he suddenly has a lot of money, her soul knows. We don't need proof. The body knows first. He stood, pacing across the living room with shallow breaths, the way he does when he's planning. And I knew him well enough to recognize that wasn't the walk of a worried man. It was the walk of someone preparing. I drew a slow, quiet breath, pulled out my phone like a shield, memorized the timestamp of the transfer. And when he turned away, I snapped a distant photo of the notification. Blurry, shaky, but real. Darren didn't notice. Or he figured I wouldn't dare. Or worse, he figured I was stupid. But the problem with men who underestimate women is that they forget we survive by watching. We learn to read silence, to decode micro-expressions, to save evidence they never imagine we're collecting. I watched him walk away down the hall toward the bedroom, gripping his phone like newly discovered gold. And something inside me twisted with a truth I didn't want to admit. He was removing me from his world, not through a door, through silence. I stayed there in the living room, staring at the lamp's soft glow reflecting across the hardwood floor. And I realized a fault line had opened that day. A crack that had always been there. Money just made it impossible to pretend anymore. The will that should have brought us together, in grief, in family history, in the challenge of reorganizing our life, turned into a heavy rain falling over dry, fractured soil. And instead of nourishing, it exposed the break, revealed what had always been hidden. That night, I heard the sound of my heart breaking in two. Slow, silent, painful. And yet, at the same time, I knew that was only the first warning, the first sign. Because what would come after would be much crueler, much clearer, and impossible to ignore. The next day, he wouldn't just silence me. He would begin taking over the entire house, code by code, gesture by gesture, as if I were already a stranger. I woke up the next day with a feeling I had never had inside that house before. It wasn't just sadness. It wasn't exactly fear either. It was something deeper, the sense that I no longer belonged there, and that somehow, while I slept, Darren had decided that for me. Sunlight slipped in through the gap in the curtains, but it didn't seem to warm anything. The air felt cold, like the house had spent the whole night holding its breath. I got up slowly, my body heavy, as if I were carrying on my back everything I refused to admit the day before. When I started down the stairs, I noticed it before I even reached the kitchen. The silence was different. It wasn't the silence of a quiet morning. It was the silence of territory, the silence of exclusion, the silence of, "This is not yours anymore." The coffee maker was off. The table was too clean. The whole space felt rearranged, not physically, energetically. I flipped the light switch, and in the background, I heard the sound of the electric gate. Beep, beep. A sound that had always been just part of daily life, but that morning it rang like a siren, a signal I didn't know how to interpret yet, but felt in my chest like a red alert. Darren walked in through the front door. He tossed the keys onto the table without looking at me, and walked right past like I was hired help and not his wife. "Morning," I tried, with a thin voice that sounded more tired than I meant it to. He didn't answer. He went past me with his phone in his hand, eyes glued to the screen, fingers moving fast. That part wasn't exactly new. He'd been like that since the night before. But there was something different in the way he was absorbed. It wasn't escape. It was focus. He was working on something important, and I wasn't part of it. I walked over to the door and pressed the gate button to check. Nothing. I tried again. Nothing. The remote I'd always used didn't work anymore. A chill went down my spine. "Darren," I called, trying to stay calm. "Did you change the gate code?" He didn't look up. I did. "Can you give me the new one?" He let out an annoyed sigh, like I'd interrupted some critical message. "I'll give it to you later." Later. Always later. After the inheritance, after the attorney, after the silence. I took a breath and forced myself to stay steady. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. He finally looked up, and what I saw wasn't anger. It wasn't exhaustion. It was distance. "Simone, I'm reorganizing everything. It's normal. Don't make it a big deal." Reorganizing everything. That phrase hit me like ice. He walked out of the room toward the hallway. Restless, I followed to try and talk to him, but something caught my eye along the way. The modem box, with the lights blinking differently. I grabbed my phone and tried connecting to the Wi-Fi. Network not found. The network we'd used for years, the one we picked together, didn't exist anymore. There was a new network, with a new name, with a new password. My whole body flushed hot, like a wave of shame had washed over me. I went back upstairs, tried to open the safe where we kept our important documents. Wrong code, wrong code, wrong code. The safe that had always belonged to both of us now belonged to him. I stood there, staring at the little red blinking display, and something hit me with painful clarity. Darren wasn't just ignoring me. He was drawing lines, cutting access, shutting me out. And he was doing all of it without saying a word. I took a deep breath, gripped the edge of the bed, and tried to steady my body. My throat was dry, my hands were shaking, and for the first time, the house felt smaller, not in square feet, but in possibilities. I went back to the living room, trying to figure out how to bring it up without sounding desperate. As I walked by the side table, something made me stop. A new key, with a new tag, and engraved on it, Main Entry, DC. A key just for him, made recently, shiny, unused. My heart pounded. He'd created his own access point, his own entry, his own line that left me on the outside, literally and symbolically. I grabbed my phone, took a picture, just like I had the night before, because one thing was becoming very clear. I needed to document everything. Darren came back into the room. He stopped near the door, arms crossed, standing like he owned the place. "Simone, please," he said. "Don't start." I walked toward him slowly, not in a panic, in full awareness. "I'm not starting anything, Darren. I just want to understand why you changed everything without telling me." He gave me that dry half smile, the one men use when they've decided you don't matter enough to deserve an explanation. Because it's a time of change, and I need more control over my house. My house, not our house, his. Something inside me snapped, a thin, sharp tear. "I live here," I answered. "I've lived here with you for years." He shrugged. "And you're still living here. I'm not kicking anyone out. I'm just reorganizing." That just landed in the middle of my chest like a brick. He grabbed his jacket, walked past me, and left again. No eye contact, no hesitation, no sense that what he'd done was anything more than a simple adjustment. I stayed in the living room, staring at the door, and the door stared back, as if it were saying, "He's slowly cutting you out of his life, and you know it." I sat on the couch and closed my eyes for a moment. The shock was big, the pain raw. But somewhere in the middle of all that confusion, a spark lit up inside me. A voice I'd never let speak this loudly before. "Don't let him erase you without you noticing." I stood up, picked up my phone, opened a new folder, and typed, "Record, day 1. He changed all the codes and didn't tell me." Because by then, I finally understood. The house wasn't ours anymore. It was his. And he was about to prove it in a way I would never forget, with a sentence that would gut me, a blow I wouldn't be able to ignore. The day he would look at me in the kitchen and say, I was only holding him back. I thought the worst had already happened, that nothing could hurt more than feeling my marriage slipping through my fingers in silence while he changed passwords, locks, access points, as if erasing me from the house, one detail at a time. But the truth is, there is always a deeper level of cruelty when someone decides to shrink you. And in my case, that shrinking came in the form of a sentence. Short, cold, surgical. "You only hold me back." I can still hear it with terrifying clarity. The tone of his voice, the way he sat at the table, the sound of the spoon tapping the cup right before my entire world collapsed inward. That morning already felt wrong. The kitchen light looked brighter than usual, as if the sun itself were trying to warm a room that had gone cold. I moved slowly, my body still adjusting to the idea that the man sleeping next to me no longer saw me as part of his life. Even so, I made coffee, boiled water, opened the cabinet, took out our usual mugs. Darren was already sitting at the table with his tablet, eyes glued to the screen. He wasn't reading news, he wasn't checking regular messages. He was browsing travel sites, real estate listings, luxury cars, like he'd opened a catalog for the new life he was building. A life of status, connections, upgrades, and absolutely no space for me. I placed the mug in front of him carefully. It was automatic, yes, but also a quiet request. See me. He didn't lift his eyes. "I made it how you like it," I said softly, stronger, no sugar. "Mm-hmm," he replied without looking up. That wasn't tiredness. It was dismissal. I sat across from him, holding my own mug with both hands, like it was the only steady thing in my morning. The silence between us felt thick enough to cut with a dinner knife. I thought about all the nights he used to slump into that same chair, exhausted, telling me his fears, his plans, his setbacks. Back then, I was the shoulder, the ear, the anchor. Now I was noise. Still, I tried. I talked to Tanya yesterday, I began gently. She mentioned a really good accountant. If you want, I can ask him to review the inheritance paperwork, give you... I didn't even finish. Darren raised his hand, palm open, without looking away from the tablet. The gesture you use to mute a TV? Simone, please. It wasn't a polite please. It was a please stop talking. Something in me cracked, but I swallowed it. I tried again, more softly. I'm not trying to get involved. I just want to help. We've always handled everything together, remember? This time, he slammed the tablet onto the table. The noise echoed. The spoon in his cup rattled. He breathed in sharply, like he needed air to say what he'd been holding back. Then he looked at me, finally. But it wasn't the look of a husband. It was the look of someone assessing an outdated piece of furniture. And he said, Simone, you only hold me back. I felt it physically. This is not a metaphor. It was as if someone shoved their fist straight into my chest, grabbed my heart, and squeezed. The air left my lungs. My vision blurred for a second. My hands lost strength, and I held onto the mug only because both hands were wrapped around it. You only hold me back. The words echoed inside my skull like someone shouting them through megaphones. They slammed against every memory we had, shattering them one by one. Hold him back? Me? I worked when he had nothing. I shared rent, debts, nights of panic. I sat beside him during job interviews that went nowhere. I held him at night when he cried about bills. I put my own ambitions on hold because he said, let's focus on stability first. And I was the one holding him back? My body wanted to scream. My mouth wanted to say, excuse me? My soul wanted to throw the mug at the wall. But I didn't do any of that. The shock froze me. A heavy, pulsing silence. Is that really what you think of me? I asked, voice trembling but steady. He looked away briefly, like the question itself was inconvenient. Then he met my eyes again and said with brutal calm, I think you don't keep up anymore. My life changed, Simone. I've grown. And you're still thinking small, wanting to solve everything with feelings and conversation. That slows me down. I can't be tied to that. Tied. He saw me as a rope around his ankle. The words fell between us like shards of broken glass. The Simone I used to be, the one who would have cried on the spot, begged him to rethink, asked what she could do, she wasn't there anymore. Something sharper was taking shape. Then tell me, I said, if I held you back so much, why did you marry me? He let out a short, cold, humorless laugh. At the time, it made sense. I needed someone there. You were good at managing the little things, being emotional support. But that phase is over. I'm on another level now. I can't drag everything from my old life with me. Drag. That's what he was to him now, drag. Tears threatened, but I swallowed them down. I stood slowly, legs weak, walked to the sink and turned on the faucet. I rinsed the mug as if the world hadn't just collapsed. Behind me, I heard him stand, keys clinking, wallet sliding from the drawer. You're too emotional, he said on his way out. If you just accept things, this would be easier. I'm not trying to fight. I just want to move on. The door shut, and with it, the last piece of innocence I had. I stood there with the water running loudly into the sink, louder than the sound inside my chest. My mind replayed the phrase over and over. You only hold me back. You only hold me back. You only hold me back. Until suddenly, between one replay and the next, another thought emerged. Not his, mine. I am not a burden. It was quiet, almost timid, but it was mine. I turned off the faucet, went to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out a notebook, opened to a blank page, and wrote, Things I am not. I am not a burden. I am not leftovers. I am not an accessory. I am not a phase. I am not weight. When I finished, I cried. Deep, silent tears, the kind that come from old places inside you. But unlike before, this crying came with something attached: clarity. Because I knew he wasn't done. There was more coming. A call I wasn't supposed to hear. A plan I wasn't supposed to uncover. A sentence that wasn't meant to reach me, but did. And it was that call, that tiny slip of his arrogance, that would ignite the woman he thought he had erased. I've always believed the cruelest kind of betrayal isn't physical. It's the betrayal built in the dark, in whispers and silences, in phrases spoken only when the person thinks you're not listening. And that day, when I heard Darren on the phone, I realized that everything I'd felt so far, the pain, the strangeness, the quiet fear, was only the surface of something much deeper. The truth was coming, and it would come raw. The afternoon felt heavy, loaded with a strange tension. I kept trying to occupy myself with small tasks: folding clothes, organizing drawers, sorting documents I no longer knew if were ours or if he already considered his. But my whole body buzzed with a sense that something was happening behind my back, something I hadn't yet seen clearly. The house seemed to breathe heavily, and so did I. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway, quick, tense. I would recognize Darren's steps anywhere. That sharp rhythm, irritated, impatient, the steps of a man always slightly bothered by the world. But that day, there was urgency. The urgency of someone hiding something. I moved toward the slightly open bedroom door, pulled not by curiosity, but by that instinct women carry, the one that flares up when the person who should protect you is planning the opposite. I heard his phone ring, a short tone, muffled by his hand. He answered too quickly. "Yeah," he said in a low, controlled voice, like he was coordinating something. My heart thudded so hard I was afraid he'd hear it. I held my breath. I didn't want to listen, but I couldn't not listen. Then the person on the other end spoke, and Darren said the sentence that knocked the air out of me. "She's not going to be a problem. Simone is too emotional." My name, said like that, not like a wife, like a liability. Too emotional. Is that how he saw me? Not as a woman, not as a partner, not as someone who carried him when he had nothing, but as a risk factor. My mouth went dry, my throat burned, my hands trembled. The voice on the other side asked something, and Darren's response froze me from the inside out. "You already got her out of the house?" The floor felt like it disappeared beneath my feet. Get her. Not leave. Not separate. Not talk. Get. As in remove. As in dispose. I felt numb. And then he spoke again, calmly, as if discussing furniture. "Relax," he said. "I'm doing it little by little. She hasn't noticed everything yet, but she'll leave without making a scene. I'm handling it." I'm handling it. He said it like I was an oversized box he needed to push out the door without scratching the floor. My chest burned. Not with anger, with disappointment. Because right there, in that moment, I realized Darren wasn't just drifting away. He was rehearsing my eviction, planning it, coordinating with someone, building a narrative where I would be the fragile, dramatic, unstable woman, the overly emotional wife who wouldn't fight back. A perfect plan, if I were the woman he imagined. Quiet, submissive, crying, accepting. But he didn't realize that the woman he tried to erase was waking up right there in that hallway, with a broken heart, but a clear mind. "Did she notice anything?" the voice asked. And Darren replied, "Yeah, she's suspicious, but she was never smart. She'll just go along with it." That one hurt more than the word get. Never smart. He wasn't just discarding me. He was underestimating me, and that awakened something fierce inside me. I didn't even think. My hands moved on their own. I picked up my phone quietly, like someone holding her own lifeline. Pressed the side button twice. Record. 10 seconds. Just 10. But enough. Enough to expose him. Enough to destroy his narrative. Enough to shift the entire game. I backed away, pressing a hand against my chest to steady my breath. My head spun, stomach twisted, legs shook, but my mind had never been sharper. Darren was trying to get me out of the house, but not just that. He was trying to make it look like my decision, like I was unstable, like I gave up. It was a perfect manipulation, until the moment he forgot who he was dealing with. I walked back to the bedroom, closed the door gently, sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in days, I didn't cry. I breathed, slow, deep. The breath of someone who just realized she isn't losing a marriage, she's gaining the truth. And truth always comes right before the turn. I knew his next move would come fast. Men who plan things like that don't stop at phone calls. And I was right. His next step wasn't just to humiliate me. It was to physically push me out. He would pack my suitcase with his own hands, like he was sorting trash. But what he didn't know was, I was ready. Because now I had evidence. I had clarity. I had something he never expected. I had me. I thought nothing could be more humiliating than hearing my husband, over the phone, calmly discussing the best way to get me out of the house as if I were a logistical burden. I thought the lowest point had been that hallway, that recording, those words. But I was wrong. The day he packed my suitcase was the day I realized some people have no fear of sinking deeper into their own cruelty. And yet, that was also the day I began to rise. I woke up with a strange sensation, as if something had already been decided for me while I slept. You know that hollow feeling in your chest, the kind that whispers, you're already being pushed out of your own life? That. It took me a few seconds to remember everything. The inheritance, the silence, the passwords changed. You only hold me back. The phone call, the plan to get her out, the audio I had recorded. My body wanted to stay in bed. My soul wanted to disappear. But something new inside me, a thin wire of strength formed in the middle of the earthquake, made me get up. I had to see with my own eyes how far he was willing to go. I walked downstairs slowly, hearing only my own footsteps. The house looked unnervingly tidy. There was a faint smell of cleaning product, windows slightly open, the rug perfectly straight. Too perfect, like a stage someone had prepared. Then I reached the hallway, and I saw it. The suitcase, my blue suitcase, standing next to the front door. Closed, upright, ready to be pulled out of the house. Next to it, a grocery bag with some wrinkled clothes, an old pair of sneakers, a worn-out jacket. On top of the suitcase, a white envelope. My stomach dropped, but I kept walking. The room was silent, but the silence screamed. I picked up the envelope. My name was written on the front, Simone, and slashed through with a thick, aggressive line cutting the letters in half. My breath caught. Not because I was surprised, I wasn't, but because of the sheer brutality of the gesture. My name crossed out, as if someone were saying, "You are no longer this. You no longer belong here." I opened the envelope. Empty. A letter without a letter. A message without words. Behind me, footsteps. Darren. He came down the hallway adjusting the sleeve of his expensive shirt, looking as put together as ever. As if he were heading to a business meeting, not throwing his wife out of the life they'd built together. "Oh, good. You saw it," he said, glancing at the suitcase. "This makes everything easier." That word, easier, made me want to laugh and scream at the same time. Easier for what, exactly? I asked, my voice calm, too calm. He crossed his arms and leaned casually against the doorframe, as if delivering reasonable, rational news. Simone, let's not make this dramatic. I already separated your things. It's more organized this way, for both of us. No point dragging this out. We both know it's over. Better for everyone if you just move on. Move on. Better for everyone. All these pretty phrases to hide one reality. He was evicting me. I looked from the suitcase to him, slowly. The pain rose like a tight knot in my throat, but with it came something else, a strange, solid indignation. Not the kind that explodes, the kind that sees. You packed my suitcase, I said, softly, almost to myself. Yes, he replied. Your clothes, personal items, basics. The rest stays here until you decide what to do. You always figure things out anyway, don't you? He said it like he was returning a forgotten jacket, not ending a shared life. I knelt in front of the suitcase, opened the zipper. Inside, my life was thrown together like scraps. Half-folded shirts, old home clothes mixed with underwear, a worn-out pajama, mismatched socks, a photo of me and my mother crumpled between t-shirts. Nothing important, nothing valuable, nothing practical. He had chosen exactly what he thought was enough for me to disappear quietly. My throat tightened, but a voice inside me whispered, "He doesn't decide what you take from your own life." And that changed everything. Instead of collapsing, I did something even I didn't expect. I began taking everything out, piece by piece, slowly, silently. I removed the half-folded shirt, refolded it properly, pulled out the pajama, shook it out, folded it right, rescued the photo of my mother, smoothed it gently, kissed the corner, and placed it in my purse, not in the suitcase. I was, without realizing it, reclaiming control. Darren watched, irritated. "Simone, what's the point of this?" he muttered. "I already did it. Just grab it and go." I looked up. "You packed this for what version of me, Darren? The woman who runs out crying, grabbing whatever she's given? That woman is gone. You haven't noticed." His jaw tightened. This was not the reaction he planned. He had rehearsed for tears, begging, confusion, not a woman folding clothes with dignity. I chose what I wanted to take: my favorite clothes, a small essentials bag, my medicine pouch, a book I'd never finished reading because I was always busy taking care of him, and the folder I'd already prepared: photos of the inheritance documents, screenshots of transfers, notes, the beginning of my quiet dossier. While I packed, he spoke again. "You're making this worse than it is. I'm trying to be mature. Some couples destroy everything during divorce. I'm being civilized." Civilized. I closed the suitcase quietly, stood up, looked him straight in the eyes. "Civilized?" I repeated. "Civilized is being honest, telling someone, I don't love you anymore. I want a different life. What you're doing is something else, trying to throw me out without dirtying your hands, coordinating with a lawyer, lying in documents, burning inventory pages. Don't call this civilized, Darren. Call it what it is: cowardly." For a second, just one, I saw fear flash across his face. My first real micro-victory. He tried to recover. "You're overreacting. You're paranoid. You're imagining things." I smiled, cold, sharp. Funny. Imagining things is a phrase guilty men use to keep women confused. Meanwhile, I saw exactly what I needed to see. In the kitchen, for example. He stiffened. I didn't even need to show the evidence. The hint was enough. I let the silence hang, then pulled the suitcase to the door, not tossed aside like he left it, but upright, neat, like someone preparing to travel. Not a thrown-out woman, a woman leaving because she chooses to. I turned to him. "You can decide you don't want to be my husband anymore. That's your right. What you can't decide is that I'll leave confused and small. That part, I won't give you." He had no reply. That was the moment I understood. He had the money, he had the house, he had the family name, but I had something he never expected. I had woken up. And a woman who wakes up, even with a shattered heart, is more dangerous to an unjust man than any lawyer. I walked to the kitchen. The faint smell of burnt paper lingered in the air. I glanced at the trash, remembering the destroyed documents, the words "rights of the spouse," and something inside me solidified. I wasn't being thrown away. I was being pushed out of a place that no longer deserved me. The next step wouldn't happen inside the house. It would happen outside, in a restaurant, at a dinner, in front of new rich friends, where he would try to shrink me publicly. But he had no idea. That night wouldn't destroy me. It would wake me. I thought the suitcase would be the lowest point, that nothing could hurt more than seeing my name crossed out on an empty envelope and realizing my husband had packed my belongings like clutter he wanted out of the way. But that humiliation, that suitcase by the front door, was only the rehearsal. The real stab came the next morning, and it didn't come from him directly. It came from the trash of the house I helped build. Life is ironic like that. The truth you need, most often, hides in the dirtiest place. I woke up early, though it felt like I hadn't slept at all. My head was heavy, my mouth dry, my eyes burning. It wasn't physical exhaustion, it was emotional exhaustion, the weight of carrying a pain that made no sense. How does a man change so completely overnight? How does someone who shared years of life with you wake up, receive an inheritance, and suddenly treat you like a burden? As I dragged myself around the house, something felt off. The silence wasn't normal. It was sharp, constructed. I went to the kitchen to get water. That's when I smelled it. Not coffee, not food, burned paper. My entire body reacted before my mind caught up. My chest tightened, my pulse jumped, a wave of heat crawled up my spine. Something was very, very wrong. I walked straight to the small trash bin by the sink. A thin line of smoke was still rising from the top. I stood there for a few seconds, breathing hard, trying to steady myself. Part of me wanted to turn away, to not see what I already feared. But the other part, the part Darren swore didn't exist, wanted the truth. I opened the lid, and time stopped. Inside were torn pieces of documents, burned around the edges, some blackened, some only scorched. I knelt slowly, like someone touching a wound, picked up the first piece, the second, and then the third. Printed in bold, inventory. My heart slammed so hard against my ribs, I felt it in my neck. My entire body chilled. My fingers went cold. My breath locked. I knew that format, that font, that document. It was part of the inheritance file, and he had ripped it apart. I grabbed another piece, then another. The charred edges told the story. He'd tried to burn them completely, but stopped. Maybe afraid of smoke, maybe rushed, maybe sloppy. Then I found the piece that made my vision blur. A sentence, incomplete but unmistakable. Quote, "Important note, since the spouse is married under partial community property," unquote. My knees nearly gave out. Partial community property, our marital regime, meaning I had legal rights to part of the assets. Not everything, not what was exclusively inherited, but a portion. And he knew. He absolutely knew. And he was trying to hide it. My eyes filled with tears, the hot kind, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. I kept digging, picking up fragment after fragment like reconstructing a crime scene. Then I found another torn page, and this one stole the last bit of breath I had. A petition with his name signed. He had declared, quote, "The marriage has been in crisis for a long time. Unlie. A setup, a calculated move. And worse, quote, there is intent for an amicable separation without asset dispute. Without dispute, meaning without me knowing my rights." Suddenly, everything clicked. The passwords, the keys, the suitcase, the sudden coldness, the rush, the silence, the organization, the narrative. It wasn't just abandonment. It was a financial strategy, a legal tactic, a plan to erase me before I realized I wasn't just a burden. I was an obstacle, and he needed me out before I asked questions. My legs weakened and I grabbed the counter for support. The tears finally came, quietly, fiercely, not from heartbreak this time, but from rage and clarity. I looked at the torn papers scattered across the kitchen floor and thought, he isn't just leaving me, he's robbing me. Robbing me of years, robbing me of dignity, and now robbing me of rights. I took a deep breath, picked up my phone. My hands trembled, but I photographed everything. Every piece, every burned corner, every partially visible sentence. Then I uploaded all the images into a password-protected cloud folder. I titled it, "Truth, Do Not Delete." When I finished, I heard the front door open. Keys, footsteps. I rushed to the sink, splashed water on my face, steadied my breathing. Darren walked into the kitchen moments later. "We need to talk," he said, with the tone of a man who thinks he controls the narrative. I turned around slowly, phone in hand. "Go ahead." He wasn't expecting that calm. "I think we need to accept this marriage is over," he said, rehearsed and polished. I didn't shake, didn't cry, didn't plead. "I understand," I replied. He froze for half a second. He continued, trying to reassert control. "Let's do this the best way possible. No drama, no stress. My life is changing a lot right now, and I need to reorganize. I don't want to fight. I just need you to accept it." He stepped forward, sounding reasonable. I stepped back, not in fear, but in clarity. Then I lifted my phone, opened the first photo, the torn inventory, his name visible. His entire face changed. "What is that?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. I swiped to the next image, and the next, and the next. His hand shook. "Simone, where did you—" "I can explain." Then I opened the audio, the 10 seconds that changed everything. "She won't be a problem. Simone is too emotional. You already got her out of the house?" He staggered half a step back, and I stepped forward. "I know exactly what you did." The words came out of me with a strength born from every piece he tried to destroy. He opened his mouth, nothing came out, and for the first time, he was the one afraid. "I'm leaving this house," I said, "but not on your terms, and not blind. I'm leaving knowing exactly who you became." The house fell silent, the kind of silence that marks the beginning of a war. But I was no longer the woman he thought he could erase. I was ready. Because the next act, the dinner, the public humiliation, the rich friends, wouldn't break me. That would be the moment I began to rise for good. After what I found in that trash bin, after the photos, the lies, the forged narrative, there was no part of me that expected honesty from him anymore. Still, when Darren walked into the room that night with a polished smile and said we had an important dinner with new friends, a chill ran through me. It wasn't excitement. It was confirmation. He wasn't just changing his life. He was preparing to display, right in front of me, The life where I no longer fit. He came into the bedroom adjusting the sleeve of his expensive blazer. New cologne. Hair styled perfectly. It wasn't the Darren who used to come home sweaty from long workdays, smelling like bus fumes or cheap office dust. He had become someone else entirely. A man shaped by inheritance, admiration, and a sudden addiction to status. His voice had changed too. "Tonight is important," he said, not as an invitation, but as an announcement. Investors, business connections, people who can open doors. I looked at him slowly. "And you want me to go why exactly? To be your wife or your prop?" He sighed, annoyed by my accuracy. "Simone, don't start. You going gives an image of stability. People notice that kind of thing." There it was. I wasn't a partner. I was a prop for credibility. For a second, I thought about staying home. But a stronger part of me, the part building its strength quietly, knew I needed to see the kind of people he was aligning himself with, the kind of man he was becoming, the world where he wanted me erased. So I went. Not for him, for me, for clarity. The car ride was silent. He scrolled through notifications, adjusted his wristwatch, cleared his throat. Not once did he look at me. Through the window, I watched the city lights passing by. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, tired but present, awake. And I made myself a promise. You won't cry at that table. You won't shrink. You will observe. The restaurant was the kind of place that pretends to be exclusive, but is really just expensive isolation. Dim lighting, crystal glasses, waiters who moved like shadows. 4 people were already at the table. 2 couples, expensive watches, loud laughter, practiced confidence. The kind of people who believe money cleans their arrogance. When Darren walked toward them, he transformed. His posture changed, his smile sharpened, his tone shifted. He became the character he wanted them to see, the self-made heir, the man who rose, the new player in the circle. "This is Simone, my wife," he said, introducing me with the tone someone uses to introduce background information. Accompanied, past tense. Not accompanies, not stands by me, no present, only past. I sat beside him feeling the eyes on me, evaluating, measuring, categorizing. One woman scanned my clothes in 2 seconds, like checking if I belonged in a catalog. Another gave me a polite smile with 0 warmth behind it. The questions directed at me were shallow. "So, what do you do? Do you like his new lifestyle? Isn't it overwhelming for you to keep up?" All in that sweet tone that drips condescension. At one point, one of the men raised his glass and declared loudly, "To the new Darren, a man finally stepping into the life he deserves." Everyone toasted. I did too, silently, out of habit, not admiration. Then he added, smirking, "You know how it is. When you rise in life, you've got to clean things up. Cut out whatever holds you back." Laughter followed, and Darren laughed along. Not too much. Just enough. Something hot tightened in my throat. I looked at him. He didn't look back. Dinner carried on, the conversations all the same. Luxury, investments, networking, legacy, image. Snippets floated around me. Forget the past. Was she supportive at least? Relationships that hold you down. You deserve better people around you now. Then I heard one of them, drunk enough to be honest, whisper to Darren, "If I were you, I'd cut everything that drags you back. Family, marriage, environment, everything. It's a new phase." And Darren didn't deny it, didn't defend me, didn't say, "She's not dragging me back." He just froze a polite smile on his face, the kind that hides agreement. On the drive home, the silence wasn't painful anymore. It was revealing. He parked, turned off the engine, took a breath. "You were cold tonight," he said. I turned to him. "Cold? I was polite. Cold was you, letting them talk about cleaning up your life like I was trash. And you didn't open your mouth. He tensed immediately. That's not what happened. You misunderstood. You always— No, I interrupted calmly. I didn't misunderstand anything. He hated that. He hated clarity because clarity cut the leash he thought he still had on me. That night, before going to bed, I texted Tanya. I need the number of a lawyer, someone good, someone who isn't intimidated by rich idiots. She replied instantly, sending now, and tomorrow you come over. We'll sort everything together. And that was the moment, after the dinner where he revealed who he truly was, that I finally remembered who I had always been. Not disposable, not burden, not baggage, not outdated. A woman who could stand, a woman who would. And soon, he'd delivered the most arrogant sentence of all. Now that I'm rich, forget me. But when he finally said it, he had no idea. I was the only one who knew exactly who he'd been before the money. And that he would never get back. I never imagined an entire shared life could fit inside a single sentence. But his did. It was on a gray morning, the kind where the sky feels heavy and the air itself seems to warn you. Darren stood in the hallway, my suitcase behind me. The same suitcase he'd packed like discarded clutter. Only now, I wasn't the discarded one. And he sensed it. The tension in the air was sharp, thin, almost metallic. And then, with no shame, no hesitation, no remorse, he said it. Now that I'm rich, forget me. I blinked slowly. Didn't cry, didn't tremble, didn't beg. What I felt instead was a strange, steady calm, like my body had finally received the official confirmation my heart had already known. He hadn't changed. He'd simply removed the mask. For the first time in months, I was able to look at him without fear, without softness, without trying to decipher what I had done wrong. Because the truth was clear. The wrong was never mine. The wrong was him, entirely. I took a small step toward him. Not aggression, not pleading, just presence. And that alone threw him off. He expected a reaction. He wanted a scene. He wanted the old version of me, the one he called too emotional, the one who would crumble. But she was gone, buried, reborn. I breathed in slowly and said in the calmest voice I've ever heard come out of my own mouth, "All right, but look at me first, just once." He hesitated, shifted his weight. Confusion flickered in his eyes. But arrogance won. He looked at me. And in that moment, I saw him, truly saw him. Small, greedy, cowardly, and utterly dependent on the admiration of others. Then I raised my phone. The screen lit up, and I held it out, showing everything all at once. The inheritance papers he tried to burn, the petition where he lied about our marriage being in crisis, the photos of the changed passwords, the dated notes, and the audio. That audio. I pressed play. She won't be a problem. Simone is too emotional. Did you get her out of the house already? His face drained of color, a full shade lighter. He stepped back, just an inch, but I saw it. Fear. Real, pure, undeniable. You tried to erase me quietly, I said, packing my life in a suitcase like a broken appliance, asking lawyers how to get me out without leaving marks, lying, burning documents, manipulating every detail. I stepped closer. He stepped back again. But you forgot one thing. I pay attention, and I don't disappear. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I'm leaving this house, I continued, but not because you want me gone, because I'm done living where my name gets crossed out on envelopes and my worth gets trimmed to fit your ego. I gripped the suitcase handle, calm, firm. And one more thing, I added. You gained money, Darren, but you lost the only person who knew who you were before the inheritance. And that you can't buy back. I walked out. The door opened like it was releasing me into a new world. The air outside felt cleaner, lighter, mine. I stood on the sidewalk with my suitcase beside me and took the deepest breath of my life. The street was quiet. The suitcase was heavy, but my soul wasn't. And that's when I understood something women often take years to realize. It isn't the end when he leaves. It's the end when you stop begging to stay. And it's the beginning the moment you choose yourself. From that day on, I began arranging everything with Tanya's lawyer, someone unafraid of wealthy men with inflated egos. I started reconstructing my life, piece by piece, truth by truth, step by step. And the best part? When the official lawsuit finally reached him, the real one, not the lie he tried to stage, Darren panicked, called, texted, tried to soften his tone, tried to manipulate, tried to pull the old strings. But it was too late. Because once a woman sees herself again, no one ever puts her back in the drawer where they kept her. My process is moving. My rights are protected. My story is clean. And me? I'm alive. Not wealthy, not glamorous, but mine. And that's worth more than any inheritance. If this story resonates with you, leave a like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, I'm here, and I'll support you, always.